I grew up in a bamboo mat house deep in the Liberian jungle. But when I was just 8 years old, our bamboo mat house in the bush caught on fire. And I ran out of the house with my twin brother and my sister, and as we stood on the grass airfield watching our home burn, I turned and looked at my sister who was sobbing, and I saw that she was barefoot. And her Sapo friend Sophie must have noticed that she was barefoot too, because Sophie knelt down, pulled the shoes off of her feet, and slipped them onto Lisa's feet. I left Liberia after a civil war broke out. But then when there was peace again, I started to return, and each time I went back to Liberia, I carried suitcases filled with shoes. And so I announced that we were going to hold a Barefoot Sunday. And I told them on Barefoot Sunday, I need you to wear your best and your favorite shoes to church, and then leave them behind so we can give them away in places like Africa. But then my challenge also was to spend the rest of the day barefoot so that our people could empathize with how 1.3 billion people live every day. People left piles of shoes in and around the wood crates we built for Barefoot Sunday. This world is a broken place, and it's a picture of how you can help change that. It doesn't have to be that way, that your one pair of shoes matter. And when we come together as a tribe, we have the power and the resources to make real change. There is a tribe of people who will. There's a movement that started of people who are saying things like, we will stop injustice. We will end extreme poverty. We will live simply. We will become modern-day abolitionists. We will put down our weapons and promote peace. We will create more art to make the world beautiful, and we will take pieces of heaven to places of hell on earth. So my invitation to you is to join the tribe and take off your shoes and walk the holy ground of a broken world.
What's up, tribe? It's Barefoot Sunday, so it's an exciting Sunday here at Youth Tribe and at the Grove. And if you have shoes, you can participate. So, welcome to Barefoot Sunday here at the Grove. It's so exciting. Last week, I left you with a question. If you were here, if you're watching my YouTube videos, I have 2 views. I need to up it to 3 views this week. So, if you're watching my YouTube videos, they're up on Youth Tribe. So, I left you with a question last week, and it was this. What can I get more involved with? What do I want to get more involved with? Is it Chin Lee, like Eric said, with the blankets? Is it homelessness in my city? Is it Live Love in downtown Chandler or globally somehow? Is it Feed My Starving Children? When I was growing up, for example, I would always see homeless people and it would just break my heart. Even at a young age, I'd be 5 years old and I'd say, Mom, can we go give them $1? Can I go give them a sandwich? Because when I was little, that just made me so sad. And I know each one of you, something just like breaks your heart. What is it? Is it homelessness? Is it people in the third world that don't have shoes? Is it people that are being sex trafficked? More people in the world now than ever are being sex trafficked around the world. What hurts your heart for justice as we're going through this series, Own the Moment? God calls us as Christians, as people. He doesn't call just Christians, he calls everyone, whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian. He says, I want you to go show love. I want you to do love in the world. There's a verse that Paul Gunther started Live Love with. And it's 1 John 3, 17 through 18. And when I was in high school, he would always preach out of 1 John 3 over and over again. So in 1 John 3, 17 through 18, it says this: if anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Let us not love with words or speech, but underline this. If you have your Bible app, highlight this. I'd encourage you to download the Bible app. It's free. You can highlight, you can do devotions. This is a side note. But let us not love with words or speech, but with action and in truth. Let us not love with words or speech, but love with action and in truth. Yesterday we went and we painted houses. I still have paint. Anyone on their fingernails? I have it still on my arm up here. I couldn't get it off. God wants us to do what? It says love with words. You tell your parents, I love you. You tell your sister, I'm sorry, I love you. Telling people, I tell my wife, I love you. Saying I love you, telling God I love you is super important. Speech is important. Saying I love you is important. I say I love you even to you students. It's important. But God says here, John says it, he writes it, don't just say it, have action. When we're Christians, it's super important not just to say it, but love requires action. God calls us not to just not to just say things, but to do things. Yesterday, some of you slept in, you did other things, you gamed because you were up late, and I'm not calling you out, but until you're in college, and when you're an adult, even right now and next year, God's gonna take away your Saturday. He's gonna take away hours from you. He's gonna take away paychecks. I said this last week. Because as Christians, God calls us to action as Christians. If we wanna help people in the third world, if we wanna help people in downtown Chandler, if we wanna make a difference in this world and solve the injustices, then what's gonna have to happen? We have to go do action. We can't just sit around and say things like this Bible verse says. Love requires action. I want you to do something because I think it's important actually to say things out loud. If you're gonna make a difference, you have to say the difference. So here's the thing, here's what you're gonna do. Look at the people at your table or look at some random person you don't know to your left or right. Love, you're gonna say it, you're gonna wake up. Love requires action. Say it again, love requires action. You're gonna go home. What does love require? Action. Love requires action. I got married. It's 5 years, 3 months, and almost 5 years, 4 months. I got married, and it was to Christine, and it was amazing. And I think to best represent love requires action, I think of weddings. Any wedding, your future weddings, all of your future weddings. I think of all the past weddings. I think of my wedding. Love requires action. So Christine and I, we're planning our wedding, and you don't think of all these things, but you have to pick out all these things. They send you these lists. You're getting married, and you have to plan out the dinner, and they send you these menus. And on the menus, it says shrimp and steak and all these options, and you have to pick out how many shrimp you want for each person to have at each table. And I'm like, this is mind-numbing details. Who's gonna just pick 97 shrimp for each person? It doesn't matter. But Christine's like, no, we have to pick out 7 shrimp for each person at each seat. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, the price is gonna be astronomical. And it was. But I didn't pay for it, so it didn't matter. So we're picking all these details out, and we get to Hawaii, and we're on the island, and the Hawaiian breeze is blowing in the air. And that morning, I'm sweating uncontrollably, and I can't breathe because it's my wedding day, and I know I'm gonna see Christine, and I'm so nervous. And I'm like, dude, I can't breathe. And my best man is looking at me. And he's like, bro. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you don't have a tie on. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I can't tie a tie. And so he's like, I'll tie it. And I'm like, you're a good best man, Chris. And he ties my tie. I'm like, how's my hair look? And he's like, good, you have great hair. I'm like, okay, thanks. I don't think he said that. I don't remember. You don't remember anything. So I get to the altar, and the wedding planner, she walks up to me. And I'm like, hey, Kristen. She's like, my name's not Kristen. I'm like, Kristen, here's the thing. It's 3 o'clock. Why aren't we starting? And she said, the ukulele man is late. And I'm like, he's late? And she's like, he's on Hawaiian time. And I'm like, that's understandable. It's island time. So the ukulele man is still not there. It's 3:15. Then it's 3:30. Then it's 3:45. The wedding still hasn't started. And in walks the ukulele man. He's a fairly big man because he's a ukulele man and he's an island man. And he walks up and his big dreadlocks are flowing like long. Like, I'm not kidding. He looked like the guy from Lilo and Stitch. And he walks up and he walks in and he's cooler than ever. And he walks in, it's like out of a movie. And he sets up. And he starts playing his ukulele. Somewhere. And I said, okay, the wedding's starting now. Thank you for being here. And then the wedding started. Somewhere. And starts playing his ukulele. So we started the wedding. And then we go, and I don't remember anything. It's just all a blur. This is how your wedding will be. And then my dad says, because my dad's doing our wedding, he says, Byron, with what token do you give Christine to show your love? And I said, and my best man, Chris, thinks Chris is there. He said, Byron, the ring. And I said, oh yeah. And Chris handed me a little blue box. And this little blue box was handed down from my grandmother to my mother to me. And inside the little blue box was a big diamond ring. And the big diamond ring was handed down from my grandmother to my mother to me. And I said, I give this ring to Christine. And I pulled out the ring and I handed it to Christine. And I said, with this ring, I show my love to Christine. And I put it on her finger. And she took that ring and she put it on. And then she handed me a ring. And then after that, my best friend walked up and stood in front of us, and her best friend walked up and stood in front of us. And they had their Bibles. And that Hawaiian breeze was blowing in their hair. And they're beautiful people, and they're tan, and they're from California. And they had just been married to each other the year before, so it's very fitting. And they took their Bibles, and they looked at each other. They'd only been married for 11 months. And they looked at one another. And we had asked them, Josh and Megan, to read 1 Corinthians 13, the love passage. And they started reading 1 Corinthians 13 at our wedding. And it says this in verse 4. It says, love is patient, love is kind, love doesn't envy, love is not boastful. Love is not arrogant, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking. Love is not irritable and does not keep a record of wrongs. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, it hopes all things. Love never ends. And they closed their Bibles and they stood, and we ran out and the wedding ended. And here's the thing. I took that ring, and here's why I tell you the story. I took that ring in that little blue box from my grandmother from who knows when, maybe the 40s or 50s. And I gave it to Christine because love is active. Love requires what? Action. I could have just said, Christine, I love you. I'm here to marry you today with my vows, which we did. But there's an active part of love, which required me that day on my wedding day to do something. And so I handed her a piece of my heritage, an important thing, and I put it on her finger. And she did the same. And then we started reading these words, and my best friend and her best friend started reading these words. And if you look at these words, known as the love passage, read at a lot of weddings. These are read in weddings like almost every weekend. It was probably read in a wedding yesterday. They're so important. I don't know if you know this, but the words I just read in 1 Corinthians, there's 15 words that Paul describes in Acts to describe love. Those are 15 words that describe love. They're actually 15 verbs. You can put it back up on the screen. Those are 15 verbs over and over. Love is patient. It's kind. It doesn't envy. It's not boastful. If you have an A in English class, then you know what about verbs? Verbs are what? Oh my gosh. A. Someone else said it. I wrote down on Friday, I was thinking about verbs and action, and I said verbs are action words. Verbs are active. Verbs are not passive words. You can't sit down if you're doing action, because verbs are action words. You have to get up and actively be doing something. I was thinking about this when I was thinking about justice and injustice. I was thinking about my mother. I was thinking about how all of our mothers, your mother, the word mother, from the time we're babies to the time we're toddlers to the time you're still sitting in high school. Maybe you were raised by a grandmother. Maybe some of you in this room, you're just raised by an aunt, or just think about all of our mothers. Action words describe our mothers, don't they? Verbs describe our mothers. What do? They nurse us. They take care of us. They run to our rescue. They put us to bed. They put up with us. They love on us. That's what mothers do. They're good caretakers. They work hard for our families. That's what mothers do. This love passage describes a mother. Growing up in Africa, a lot of you know that, so I grew up in Malawi. And I remember coming home one day, and I'm in 4th grade. We had just moved to Malawi, so I'm like 9 or 10 years old, and I remember walking up to our house. We have this house, and it's on a road right next to the college. And I walk up, and I see a huge line of college students standing outside of, not college students, I'm sorry, women with their babies on their backs, and they're standing outside the house. And it's just this image, women, all the way, I mean, hundreds of women with babies. And you have to understand, at the time, there was a famine, a real famine. I'm not talking about a biblical famine. Women were feeding their babies mud that looked in the shape of cookies, mud, to fill their stomachs so they would stop crying at night. They would give them mud at night. So these women were lined up all the way, hundreds of women, all the way outside the gates, as far as your eye could see, up to my parents' house, up to my house. So I walked inside, and I'm 9 years old, and I don't understand what's going on. And I walk in, and I get home from school, and I put my stuff down, and I look, and there's baskets of fruit and vegetables and bread. And my mom with my aunts, they're standing at the front of the house, and they're handing these women baskets of fruit, baskets of vegetables, baskets of bread, because these women are going home back to their village with just a little bit of fruit, a little bit of vegetables, and a little bit of bread to give to their babies and their kids tonight because they were starving. My mom decided to take action. She decided to feed the women in the village because the women in the village were starving and feeding their kids mud and dirt. Love requires action. When you see injustice and something in the world that looks wrong to you, it requires action. I want to look at this verse in James that we've looked at before this month. In James 1:27, it says this: religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress. My mom showed me something that was so important to me at such a young age. When you see something wrong, when you see something that you can do, take action. Don't just sit there. I'm all for talking about our Christianity, saying I'm a Christian, saying I go to church, posting on Instagram, which I do a lot. But it's one thing, and those are good things. I think it's so important to do that. It's one thing, though, to just post and to say I go to church and to say I'm a Christian. But I really think that that's half the battle. I think that that's half of it. If you just did that, you're missing the other half. Faith without works is dead. If you're saying I'm a Christian, if you're saying I go to church, if you're posting all this stuff, if you have all this stuff in your bio, but you're not living it out, then what's the point? Because all these people need your help. All these people in the world are just suffering. I'll close with this story. When I was in 8th grade, we took a team from the Grove over to Malawi, to where I grew up. And so a bunch of people from the Grove went back to Malawi. And we took a basketball team, we took a VBS team, we took hundreds of people. And I went on the basketball team, I'm a baller. And so I'm balling out one morning, and we're playing against this team in northern Malawi. And we're playing against them, and this dude, he keeps posting me up, and I'm in the paint, but I keep looking down at this guy's feet. I keep looking at his feet, and he has no shoes on. And I keep thinking to myself, Byron, don't go 100% because you're gonna step on his toes. And it kept hitting me, I can't go 100%, even though I want to, because I don't wanna break one of his toenails. I don't wanna step on his feet. As dumb as that sounds, I just didn't want to. I didn't wanna hurt him because I had big high tops on and this guy's playing barefoot. So after the game, everyone's shaking hands, we're all shaking hands, and I go find that guy, I go up to him, I give him a little bro hug, and I walk over, and we're on a cement court up in the mountains, and I go and I sit by him, and I said, hey, can we chat? And I said, hey. And I did the only thing I knew that I should do. And I said, can I pray for you that you get new shoes? No, I didn't do that. I sat down with him, and I looked at him, and he was about 6'2", just like me. He had a size 13. And he looked at my shoes, and I looked at him with his bare feet. And I said, "Can I give you my shoes?" And he just smiled, and I started unlacing them without him even giving me an answer. And I gave him my shoes because I had just got these for my birthday like 2 weeks earlier, and I knew he was gonna walk who knows how far to his village barefoot. I'm gonna leave you with another question as we get ready to walk over to Big Church. Are you ready to go all in on justice? Because we've been asking, can you own the moment? 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 Next week, you have a great opportunity to own the moment. And I'd love for you today to own the moment on Barefoot Sunday. Maybe you're super attached to your Vans or whatever you're wearing, but I'd love for you to own the moment today. Maybe you're ready and you have a bag of shoes. I want us to all walk over there to Big Church because they are wrapping up right now. And the worship team is gonna come out. You guys can come out. I'm gonna pray. We're gonna wrap up with a song, and I'm gonna give you an opportunity to come, take off your shoes, and we're all gonna walk over there and put them on the stage as they go ahead and pray, because they're gonna be done in 5 minutes. And I want you to think about it. I want you to own the moment. I'd love for us to all walk over there barefoot and put our shoes on the stage as a whole youth tribe to join the Barefoot tribe. So grab a hand. No, don't grab a hand. Maybe at a distance. And let's go ahead and pray. God, you call us to action as your servants, as your kingdom workers. You call us not to just talk about love, but to live love. To do things that are bold and sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes that will hurt our feet. But walking in this world is sometimes painful. It sometimes hurt. It sometimes will require us to take off our shoes and to lose things and to lose our money. But we should love you more than we should love our material possessions. God, I pray that you just light this youth group on fire. Let us be a light on a hill. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.